On today's episode of the Serious Sellers podcast, we have guest Destaney Wishon, and she's going to be talking all about AI advertising, and she's going to be answering all of your PPC related questions. This and more on today's episode of the Serious Sellers podcast.
How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers podcast by Helium 10. I'm your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's completely BS-free, unscripted, and unrehearsed, organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level in the e-commerce world.
Hey, Destaney.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Cannot complain.
Good. Okay, well, I guess what we'll do is I'll let you take it from here, and we can get going on your presentation.
Amazing. So the topic we put together for our conversation today is really around AI and kind of leaning towards, full AI versus automation versus rules and kind of what the best bet is for you as a brand. The reason this is a, up and coming topic is a lot of people are releasing new tools in this space, and I'm getting millions of questions, whether it's around creative utilization, whether it's around PPC specifically. We put together a quick presentation to kind of put the context of that out in the space for everyone on how you should best be using the tools that are available. Ads automation. So really the kind of specific use case we're diving into here is really AI advertising with Helium 10 or rules and automation. That being said, as always, I kind of made this for a more general audience. So if anyone's using any of the automations within Ad Console or relying on any other external tools, a lot of the principles are going to apply as well. First and foremost, my ChatGPT is trained on the majority of my philosophies as well as my agency philosophy. So I wanted to ask it, if you're following all of my content and Helium 10's teaching and using ChatGPT for continuous learning, do you think brands can manage all of their PPC on their own? I thought that was a fun question to ask. I'd be really curious for everyone that's listening in right now, how many people are managing PPC all on their own? Or maybe you're working with an agency. Feel free to share or not. I thought this was a fun question because, again, a lot of my ChatGPT is built off my context. So the options that it responded was, great for startups, people who have lower spend, or those who are just learning, have the opportunity to do it themselves. There's a recommendation for a hybrid model. So as you begin scaling and things get a little bit more complex, maybe you utilize a tool or an automation, but you're still able to get, quarterly audits or work with a consultant, things like that. And then there's the recommendation. Once you get to a certain size, you almost need to start fully outsourcing unless you're going to have a pretty large team internally because things change incredibly quickly and your risk becomes much higher. But all of that to say, if you follow all of our content and you have the right tools in the space, you can manage your Amazon advertising all on your own with relatively low risk. So there's three really big things that we found cause a variance in how you should be managing your Amazon advertising, I would say. That is time, context, and performance, especially when it comes to AI. So time is the biggest lever, in my opinion. And I think it's the piece a lot of people don't consider when they're considering Amazon advertising. Time from operational standpoints and also time from a management standpoint, how frequently you're checking in, all of those things really, really matter. Context matters when we start chatting about AI. AI does really well, but doesn't always have the right context when it's optimizing for your performance. The last thing is there is a performance risk when it comes to AI. AI isn't always perfect. So the level of risk that you're willing to take really is going to be dependent on your outsource lever there as well. Time, do you have time to optimize the account yourself? Context, we kind of dove into. Do you have simple goals that are easy for AI to understand? If your only goal with Amazon advertising is hitting a certain ACoS, AI can do pretty well. A performance though, what is your risk tolerance? And can you let go of control due to the time efficiency that you save? These are all the questions I would ask myself when I'm considering how I should be managing my accounts. Time is probably the biggest one because Amazon advertising is not set it and forget it. A lot of solopreneurs that are managing their ads on their own, I think, struggle in this area. They create campaigns and they make minimal tweaks and optimizations. No matter the size of your account, you should be spending a minimum of 30 minutes a week optimizing. One of the key reasons is the market changes relatively quickly. You have new competitors that are entering the market. You have new brands that are bidding a little bit differently. This affects your strategy. If a ton of brands enter the space and start bidding much higher than you, you're going to lose a lot of impressions and sales. You need to be checking in on this really, really frequently. But this is where tools can come into play. There's a lot of different tools in this space that can help you pull those levers without being fully hands-off and fully automated. Another area that I see a lot of people leaning into AI is maybe not managing your PPC, but helping you train. So AI can assist in your education around PPC. This is probably the biggest growth lever that I think people are missing out on. Carrie and I actually just had a fun conversation around this. A lot of people have struggled to get into PPC because of things like all of the acronyms and all of the different strategies that gurus are pitching. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution, but you can easily open up ChatGPT right now and ask it about match types, ask it about ad types, asking it about bid philosophy, and learn relatively quickly how to ramp up and scale Amazon advertising, where I think education was a barrier for scale for a lot of brands. You can now educate yourself, which is going to allow you to better utilize the tools in the space and or outsource if needed. I'll also say AI can help with high-level analysis. If you do something like take a screenshot of your targeting tab and upload it into ChatGPT, ChatGPT can help you start making assumptions on where you need to distribute your budget and or optimize your bids as well. The last thing is AI can help with basic goals. So I mentioned this earlier, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. So when you're using something like Helium 10 AI advertising, the fault in any AI models is that they don't always have the full context. And what I mean is when you're managing your PPC, you frequently have different campaigns for different objectives. We've talked about this in the past. You'll have campaigns focused only on profitability and low bids and low ACoS. But what if you launch a new campaign for a brand new product? If you launch a campaign for a brand new product, but your AI is optimized only for profitability, it's probably not going to be a fantastic launch, because we know when we are launching a new product, our goals are on scalability. So we typically go high bids, high traffic. This is where AI really, really struggles, and any automations really, really struggle to make adjustments for these differing objectives. AI ads specifically gives us kind of two levers to pull. One of them is on budget distribution. Are we on a set budget per ASIN or a set budget per account? And then also we have some advanced targeting objectives around what products are we targeting? Should we exclude certain ASINs? And what is our ACoS goal? So as an account, as a whole account, if our only focus is on ACoS and we have a decent amount of data to give context to the AI, this could be a really good fit. For those who do not have time to log into their account for 30 minutes a week and do not have time to harvest their own keywords and focus on optimizing their bids, that's where AI can do a really good job. Because AI has enough data being input into the algorithm in order to help it learn how to optimize towards your ACoS targets. So if that's you, you have no time for PPC whatsoever, you have no time to hire someone for PPC, that's when AI can maybe be beneficial. But I would say for most brand owners, you're taking the risk or you're signing up for the, hey, my performance may not be perfect, but it's okay because I'm saving money operationally through my own time. That is the trade-off that I think most brands or brand owners really need to understand. Now, the next lever is context. This is where we're going to start getting into a little bit more strategic management. AI cannot work without the appropriate context, as we just discussed. If you have a complex SKU line, if you have differentiating campaign goals, if you have different products and different lifestyle journeys, AI cannot work appropriately. As mentioned, if your only goal is focused on ACoS or tacos, it may be okay. But if you are trying to achieve different objectives and you're doing a little bit more than probably that average brand owner there, that's when you really should start leaning into maybe more rules-based scenarios or tools that can assist you, but still allow you to have your own control. I, just for funsies, asked ChatGPT, is a 50% ACoS bad? Because again, context matters. I will have a lot of people hop in the chat and say, 50% ACoS is bad. But for some brands, a 50% ACoS is actually good. Think about supplements or think about, very expensive products. Sometimes a 50% ACoS is good. I was curious what my chat would say because it's been built off my training. And it gave me this response. It depends on what story that 50% is telling. When is 50% ACoS bad for low margin products or mature catalog? But funny enough, this isn't exactly a perfect response either. As mentioned, when a 50% ACoS can be good during the launch phase or during the halo effect or with brand awareness, ChatGPT has the context of my training. The majority of AI SaaSes out there are not going to have this context, right? So it's going to be a struggle for your brand because again, if you sign up for a 20% ACoS and that is all your AI is working towards, but you have a number one keyword that you're converting really well on at a 50% ACoS, you may want to override that decision, right? This is where I think rules-based and kind of working with a more manual system can be a really big opportunity for brands. Now, not everyone may understand bid management philosophies, right? That can be a little bit of a difficult conversation. So that's where I think, again, leaning into tools that can help you operationally, take some of that load off of your plate without being fully automated is the best bet for a lot of people. I'm going to shout out the bid templates that we built within Helium 10 for this reason. So we helped build the context for the rules-based models here. So I think there's kind of 4 to 5 different levers I typically see brands leaning on. One is, their only goal is maximizing profitability. You can create these these templated rules for your campaigns. Maybe you want a campaign focused on profit. Maybe you want a campaign on just launching an ASIN. Maybe you want one focusing on maximizing your sales because Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming around the corner. That is the perfect middle ground for the majority of brand owners who are trying to manage ads themselves. Unless you tell me you're a professional at PPC. That's very different. But you still typically need that operational lift. The next step is, okay, maybe you want to be a little bit more advanced than the rules templates we have. Being able to hop in and create your own optimization levers is going to be really, really beneficial. I know some brand owners will say, hey, as long as I'm converting over 20%, maximize my impressions. Or some brands like to look at things like click-through rate. If you want that kind of full control level, that's where you really need to build your own bid rules within the platform. But again, you have to consider the operational trade-off. I think this is where a lot of brand owners make mistakes is, they either try to own PPC all themselves and they spend 20 hours a week when it would be cheaper to rely on tools. Maybe they struggle with letting go of control in that situation. Or on the flip side, they know nothing and they go all in on AI and they realize AI doesn't have the appropriate context for what they are looking for. This is kind of a quick example of what this looks like and why I like this for some of the people that are in that middle ground. If you rely on rules, it allows you to quickly see all of the suggestions and recommendations, and then you can apply them as you will. So you're still not having to go through every single campaign by hand. You created the rules, and then you have the recommendations within the console to make the adjustments that you need. This is the best bet for the majority of brands, in my opinion. Now, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I would have probably said rules-based is still too difficult. It's such a learning curve. But now with AI, you could even take a screenshot of this and upload it and say, hey, what are your recommendations? How do you train someone on those recommendations, right? And AI is going to allow us to kind of break that learning curve from an education perspective, which I think is really, really beneficial. Now, I think the last thing that I always want to consider is there's an operational trade-off for performance, especially if you go too heavy in AI and too heavy in rules-based and you don't focus any time on hands-on keyboard. This is the same thing with agencies I see as well. One of the first conversations that comes up is no agency is going to know or care about my brand as much as I do. Look, that's probably true, potentially. I'm a little bit biased because I am on the agency side. The trade-off, though, is that the agencies are typically really dialed in when it comes to operational efficiency. They work across multitudes of categories and multitudes of different products and ad types. They've typically built operations that help them scale. So even though your ACoS may be 2% higher, maybe they're able to do things much more efficient than you hopping in and spending 20 hours a week, right? Everyone tends to forget about their time when it comes to this algorithm. And this is the same thing that needs to be considered when we're looking at AI. If we're solely relying on this hands-off approach, there are going to be things that we are missing. I can promise you that. On the flip side, though, you may be gaining some operational aspects of not having to be able to be, I would say, as efficient. Now, Tim made a fun comment here of, I've yet to encounter an agency who can beat a decent rules-based campaign. This is true up until a certain point in time, I will say. I typically see up until around $100,000, maybe $200,000 a month. You can rely on pretty much everything in-house. Past that is where we see a pretty large drop-off, and that brand owners cannot necessarily just keep up with all of the changes that really make or break performance within a category. And I listed some of those here because I think it's really important to, again, balance. What is AI good at? What are rules-based systems good at? The fundamentals, which is math, in my opinion. It's keyword harvesting and figuring out what keywords that we need, which is easy through a search term report scrape, and bid management. It's optimizing your bids for different performance goals like profitability and sales. Where we see an agency or a full-time person really starts to make sense are things like strategic campaign management. Creating campaigns for market share objectives or organic ranking objectives. AI has struggled to piece together things like search query performance report for market share and your Amazon advertising. They're two things that are directly correlated, right? That's been a struggle. That being said, you can bridge that gap through some good SOPs. Other areas where we've seen that, agencies outperform are new updates, things like creatives. Sponsored brands typically drive an additional 20% of advertising sales at almost the same ROAS or ACoS as your sponsored product campaigns. But a lot of people don't have the time to go in and create them and don't have the tools to create the appropriate imagery. This is another area where you need both a rules-based system and potentially a human really managing. Now, again, if you're doing less than $100,000 a month, this is going to be a very small portion of your business. But as you start to scale and as you really start building a brand, these are details that really help you stand out on the page and drive a huge competitive advantage. We've analyzed hundreds of thousands of billions of data points on this, and we have seen a direct correlation of customers who are exposed to a sponsored brand ad are more likely to convert on a sponsored product ad, right? So these little details really, really start to stand out for a brand. I shouted this one out because if anyone hasn't played around with Amazon Advertising's AI-generated image creator, they've actually updated their model in the last few months. These are some direct examples of a brand that we manage that I created. It's a really good way to lean into AI tools to help your brand compete with maybe the large brands in the space that have millions of dollars to spend on commercial shoots and video assets, right? And it's something that AI is struggling to tie together. How do you tie together the appropriate asset with the appropriate keywords, with the appropriate bids for those keywords, with the appropriate budget for those keywords, right? That's where you really need a human to tie all of that together. Not to mention, again, the organic ranking piece, which is directly correlated to your Amazon advertising management. If your only objective is an ACoS, again, you can probably lean on a good rules-based system or AI. But as you start moving out and start having different goals as a brand and as your brand matures, that's when you're really going to start diving into some of these small areas. Another key area is video. I wanted to shout that out because we're seeing video really grow in the space. Just kind of an important note in general. As Amazon, as a digital shelf gets more competitive, think of what page one looks like. It's no longer a huge advantage having a lot of reviews. It's no longer a huge advantage being the lowest price in the category because someone's going to come in and potentially undercut you and then no one has margin in the space. The biggest advantage that we are seeing for all of our brands is driving awareness before the click or before the search was made and having creatives that stand out. That is one of the biggest advantages that we are seeing. It's no longer a competitive advantage to compete on price or reviews. And almost everyone has a good PDP these days, right? So making sure you're leaning into these creative opportunities and building awareness before the search is made is incredibly, incredibly important. And those are things that AI can't do on their own. So it's a little bit of my soapbox, but I'm seeing a lot of brands make this mistake. This is an area where I think, again, that rules-based system and having a strategic leader on your Amazon advertising is really, really going to stand out. The last thing I'll say is AMC. AMC can't be perfectly incorporated just yet into your general Amazon advertising, but it can be incorporated directly into your sponsored products rules-based. Mar has a great question I'm going to go before I dive into AMC. He said, Amazon algorithm is built on reviews and also low price. How do you defer? This is a great question. The algorithm is built on those things, but what the algorithm is actually built on underneath that is conversion rate and click-through rate. So if everyone has the same amount of reviews, which is kind of what we're seeing is, all reviews are averaging out and everyone has a lower price, how do you increase your conversion rate or your click-through rate? You have a better main image and you figure out how to make your customers convert. How do you stand out on the page? How do you drive education to a customer before they make the search? This is really, really important. Those are how you differentiate on the platform. People that are leaning into external traffic, people that are leaning into more DSP and better graphics and better imagery, those are the brands that are really standing out. 5 years ago, it was a competitive advantage to have more reviews because people didn't know how to garner reviews. Same thing with low price, right? And then as the platform got more and more competitive, we're seeing this playing field almost level in that regard. And people are having to figure out different ways to stand out. So the last bit again, AMC. This is an area where AMC cannot be managed directly by AI just yet, but AMC, in my opinion, is the biggest advantage for small brands that Amazon's ever released. Truly. Any brand can manage or utilize AMC. It's directly within Advertising Console. You don't have to be utilizing DSP, and you could be spending as low as $500 a month, and AMC would still be beneficial for your brand, if not more beneficial for your brand. And that is because AMC allows us to niche down and not just target people that are searching for a keyword, but also target people that are searching for a keyword and of a certain audience set. So let's say I sell water bottles. The term water bottle is very, very expensive, upwards of $5 to $10 cost per clicks. Maybe I'm too small of a brand to compete on that term, even though it's exactly what my product is. What AMC allows me to do, similar to a placement modifier, is say, I want to target water bottle, but only if I know someone is already familiar with my brand, or only if they have purchased XYZ in the past. This allows us to make our audience smaller. So we can still bid a little bit higher, but we have a smaller audience and an audience that's much more likely to convert. These are areas that I think, again, AI is not going to manage perfectly in the beginning because you have to be able to identify your audience. You have to know what audience has a higher likelihood of converting. If you're asking, how do we get access to AMC? Carrie and I did a full webinar on this. Carrie, I'm sure that can be dropped somewhere. I think we covered all of these details of where AMC is, how you access it. Do you know if that's available?
The first thing you have to do is go into Helium 10 Ads and create an instance. And it's under the settings, and then you click on the AMC tab, and then you'll create an instance. But then there's more of a manual process if you want to get access to actually do the advertising. So you'll need to write into customer service for that. Once you have the instance, you'll get the reporting, but then you really want probably to be able to run the ads themselves. So that's kind of a more manual setup. Unfortunately, Amazon hasn't made it automatic at this time. So we can work with you on that.
Amazing. A lot of people in the chat, we were talking about rules-based ads, and this is where, 80-20, your rules-based and your AI can manage the majority of the foundation. But once you get to a certain point, that's where you're really going to need to be a little bit more strategic, whether it's you personally staying up to date all the changes and, being able to communicate those changes to whoever's managing your ads. Whether it's you diving in and working with the appropriate tech that can allow you to access these features and things like that. These are differences that can really make it or break it for a brand. AMC in particular, we have seen increase our conversion rate almost 100% on certain campaigns. And that's because instead of targeting everyone in the category searching for a keyword, we're only targeting the people who are more likely to purchase from us. If you're familiar with running meta ads, think a little bit more in that mentality. AMC is allowing you to target audiences, not just keywords. And yet to Denny's point, the audience PPC is much, much more effective in my opinion. And Casey asks, for improving ROAS, what is the most effective audience for AMC? Here's the fun part. Directly with an advertising console, you only get access to 3 or 4 audiences so far. Play around with all of them. They're all really beneficial. New to brand probably won't be great for you on a ROAS perspective, but some of the remarketing ones will be really good for you. But if you get access to AMC, you can actually play around and create your own audiences. So you can target things like anyone who's watched my sponsor brand's video. I want to bid a little bit more on sponsored products to target them. Because think about it, if a customer watched your video, they've probably been a little bit more educated on what your product is. So if they watch your video and then they type in water bottle, you may want to bid a little bit more on that keyword, right? Because you know you're targeting someone who's already familiar with your brand. They just haven't converted yet. And something we've seen across the board is it takes multiple touch points in order to actually drive a conversion. So that's a really huge opportunity for a lot of brands. Now I'm going to pause here. Anyone have any questions so far? We're pretty much on the last 2 slides, so we can dive in. But at the end of the day, it's really how much time do you have as a brand owner? Do you have enough time to do this on your own? In my opinion, it doesn't take more than 30 minutes a week if you have a good foundation. And then beyond that, that's where you really can start diving into how to use tools to help scale your time and how do you stay up to date with all the new releases that are going to give your brand that real edge in the space.
What audience building tactic in AMC do you see giving sellers the biggest ROI?
I would say the biggest audience building tactic we see is combining a high bid top of search modifier to make sure we're getting a lot of traffic with a really niche audience. So the problem with AMC audiences is sometimes you're going to make too small of an audience to really not drive a ton of sales, right? You're targeting too small of a pool of customers. So what we like to do is we take our top 10 highest traffic search terms, keywords, put them in a campaign, and we'll bid really high or relatively high. So that way we're winning the top 4 spots and getting a lot of traffic. And then we're going to apply an AMC audience that is highly, highly aligned. Whether it's a remarketing audience, if we sell supplements, that could be a good one, or a curated audience that we built custom targeting maybe people who have purchased last year, or maybe people who viewed our competitors, things like that. With AMC, it's really about balancing a large enough audience pool to drive sales with a niche enough attributes to drive, I would say, that additional profitability.
We have another question here. I have 20 SKUs that are all the same product, but different designs. All of them share the same keywords, but they can also have some unique keywords based on the design. I don't know what the question is, but
there you go.
Oh, and then it says, how do I create a campaign that doesn't cannibalize?
Great question. For one, you really don't need to worry about too much cannibalization unless you're looking at your number one organically and then you're running ads. Your ads won't directly compete. We see this a lot. We manage quite a few apparel brands. So I'll use that as an example. So say I sell a t-shirt. I could target 100 different keywords that are related to t-shirts. I'm going to break out campaigns by the highest search volume differentiators, V-neck versus crew neck. I'm going to put those in different campaigns because I really need to understand what one's converting better, what one's most related to my audience. I may put all of my products or variations in the same campaign for white t-shirts, since every single one of them is a white t-shirt. That's kind of a good way to balance performance and budget allocation without cannibalizing your optimizations. You're not going to cannibalize your sales on platform. Amazon does not allow you to directly compete within PPC, so that's not going to be a concern. You could have one campaign for each product, all bidding on the same keywords. You're not going to compete. But that's how we end up segmenting. If we want to win, if they're all in parent variations, or in their own standalone variations, that's also how we're going to win more market share. Is we can have 4 products all bidding on t-shirts. So we're going to win the top 4 placements and we're going to look like a large brand on the platform.
All right. The next one is, I am new in Helium. Which AI ad is good, strict or shared budget?
I think this one doesn't really affect your performance. It's really more of your accounting and your finance. Shared budget's probably a little bit easier to say, hey, I only want to spend this much money a month on all of my products. If you want a strict budget, that's going to allow you to be a little bit more precise on which ASINs get which budget. So it just depends on how you're tracking internally. If you have one set budget and you're tracking tacos as a whole, then use shared budget. If you want to separate your ASINs, like you have a brand new launch ASIN that's going to get separate budget, then you're going to want to use strict and segment the two.
All right. Next question is, Do you need to be an expert in writing prompts when using AMC, since Helium 10 is going to get me access later today?
Nice. Well, one thing to note is that even within Amazon advertising, it takes a few days to get your access turned around and for it to reflect an ad console. That's a delay in Amazon's end, not Helium 10's end. Two, we talked about prompt writing in the large webinar where we dove into AMC specifically. You don't need to be an expert. Amazon's going to give you 4 to 5 templates. And then you're also going to be able to lean on like ChatGPT. Our team uses a lot of ChatGPT to custom write prompts, which is fantastic. If you know SQL, even better. But Amazon's going to give you 30 recommendations within AMC. They're going to give you 3 to 4 with an ad console, and then you can also custom write with AI on top of it.
All right. And it says, do you know if Amazon will have an AMC option for sponsored brand campaigns?
It's already available, which is incredible. So again, we kind of mentioned this is something we lean into a lot with sponsored brands. They already have templated audiences available within Ad Console right now, but you can also apply all of your general custom audiences into sponsored brands or sponsored products or sponsored display, actually.
Alrighty. I'm running manual product ads for 6 months now. I think I have been running manual product ads for 6 months now. Most of the time, campaign performs well in the beginning, but later on it underperforms. What could be the main reason for this?
I would probably say you need to look at your optimization. Are you increasing bids or lowering bids that don't make sense? Or has your product conversion rate changed over time? If your product conversion rate has dropped since you started the campaigns, your PPC is not going to perform as well. Or if you increased your bids too aggressively, then your ACoS is going to increase as well.
All right. The next one is, what AMC audience is best to improve ROAS?
It really depends on your products, honestly. You can take a look at them and you'll kind of intuitively be able to understand what audiences are probably going to perform best for you. If you sell supplements and have high repeat purchases, you're going to want to lean into a certain audience. If you have a high price product, you're going to lean into a different audience that requires higher frequency and touch points. It's really dependent.
All right. And this is going to be the last question. Is it possible to run both AI-driven campaigns and manual campaigns at the same time? Specifically, I'd like to know if we can use insights from Helium 10's AI, such as keyword data, bid recommendations, or competitor ASIN targeting to build and optimize our manual campaigns. If so, how?
I don't think I'd recommend it in this instance, if we're being honest. If you want even an inch of control, I would recommend using that middle ground of bid templates and starting there. Because then you're still going to see the recommendations and you're going to be able to choose which ones you want. So you have the ease of being able to see the insights, but you still have the control of being able to make the adjustments. If you lean on AI solely, you pretty much are just, I don't ever want to take a look at anything, just run in the background and stay safe and focus on ACoS.
Yeah, and we do have tools where you can take a look at the competitors and where they're targeting and get a better idea of, just in general keywords that you should be targeting instead of kind of starting completely from scratch. So our Cerebro tool has that. We also have brand analytics where you can put in your competitors' ASIN and see kind of where they're converting the most. So those are kind of tools I think you could start off with too, before kind of wasting a bunch of spend to kind of learn these types of things.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Just want to say thank you so much to Destaney for this awesome presentation and answering all these questions. We will have the recording of this and we'll post it. We actually have a new YouTube channel. So I wanted to let everyone know that we have a new YouTube channel where we're going to post all of these kinds of recordings and Serious Sellers podcasts and our weekly buzz. So what you'll need to do is just go to go to YouTube and then search Helium 10 Serious Sellers podcast and then subscribe to that channel. And that's where we're going to post this recording. So make sure that you go there and subscribe to that. And also if you comment and like on any of the videos, we'll do a one-on-one with either me, Bradley, or Shivali. So go ahead and do that because I think it's definitely worth it just for that little bonus there. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Destaney, for all of this great info. And we will all see you all the next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See ya.